The one thing I would say to people who are broke is stop trying to scam shit for free. I was that way. Stop trying to beg, borrow, steal to get what you want, because it's coming from the positioning that you can't have it. If you want to change, and there's a way to do it, go out, back yourself that it's going to work, make the money, find the money, because I've had clients do this hundreds of times now, and the ones who believe and go after it and find the money, they make it work, and they've gone on to create things beyond fathom. Stop sabotaging yourself. Stop trying to scam shit. We value what we pay for. Go find the money to get it done. So here's a story about the poverty complex, and it's my own personal story. When I was sick, I was more than 18 months into being sick, and I'd lost everything. I'd spent over 60 grand trying to get better. My career was in a shambles. I was 50 odd kilos. I was sleeping 20 hours a day. I was living with my family's home. God bless them. They were looking after me. And our ex-Prime Minister, Bob Hawke, had brought a famed Qigong healer called Robert Peng to Australia to work on his daughter who had a chronic fatigue, and it worked. So I lined up a session with him, and I arrived, and he spoke very little English, and the session was in Sydney, and he pointed at my forehead, and bolts of energy started striking me in the forehead. He wasn't even touching me. And I'm like, what the? And then he would stick it here, and I would react to it, and I'd burst into tears, and this whole thing about people not understanding me came out. It's a source of much grief that I'd never even imagined before. So I came out of it, and he said, your energy is killing you. I said, killing me? He said, yeah, killing you. I said, well, what do I do? And he said, you must learn how to harness your energy. And I'm like, okay, when do I start? And he's like, you are not ready to learn. I said, well, when will I be ready to learn? And he said, I will call you when you are ready. I'm like, ah. So I came out of there, bawling my eyes out, and I walk out onto the street in Sydney, and there was an anti-abortion rally on the street. And people started throwing eggs at me, thinking I was coming out of the abortion clinic. And it was exactly the thing that I'd just gone through with him, was this whole thing, no one gets me, this pain that I had. And I ended up being wedged between two police horses as they moved me through this crowd, being hurled abuse, and it wasn't like misunderstood. So I came back, and my good friend Brandon Bays was here in Australia, and she said, come up and do some journey work, which is her famous book, regressive type therapy, and there's also a famed healer up here, and I think she can help you. So I came up to Byron Bay, and I went and saw Kiai Weber, and she was one of the only practicing kahuna body workers at the time outside of Hawaii. Direct lineage from Kahu, the big kahuna, if you will. And she worked on me for a good couple of hours, and the same thing came up about being misunderstood. And I came out of it bawling my eyes out, and she said, your energy's killing you, you know. I said, yeah, I've heard that before. I said, what do I do? She said, well, I'm doing the course for the first time to teach people this work for the first time at our property on Friday. It's $2,500. And I went, you're just trying to scam me, just trying to get my money. Can't afford it. I walked out of there. And I went to pat a dog, and another dog jumped across and bit me down to the bone, stripped me down to the bone. I'm bleeding like a bastard. I walk back into the doctor's surgeon and say, can anyone stitch me up? The doctor's stitching away, looks at me and says, you've got something like a chronic fatigue, but really bad. I said, yeah, how do you know? He said, it's in your eyes. Your energy is killing you. I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake. I've heard that before. He said, you should see the kahuna. And I said, I just saw her just then. He said, well, she's doing this course. And it was actually a husband who said, we're doing this course for the first time on Friday. It's $2,500. Again, I'm like, yeah, they're just trying to scam me, just trying to get my money. I don't have $2,500. Tell you what, Doc, if I make $2,500 by Friday, I'll come and do your stinking course. I went out, I caught the bus back to Byron Bay. I was that broke. And on the Friday, I was to leave here and go to my best mate's Bucks weekend. And I checked my account, and $1,500 US came into my account for something I did years ago. Literally years ago. And it came to $2,520 Australian. So I said, fuck, okay, I guess I'm doing this kahuna course thing. So I went and did it, and for 5 days they wouldn't let me sleep and made me do this Polynesian art of flying. And somewhere during that week, it broke the camel's back. I didn't get stronger straight away, but energetically something shifted in me, and I kind of knew it was going to work. Here's the thing. I went back to Tamworth via the bus, where I was living in my parents' house because I've been so sick for so long. And there's a letter there from Robert Peng. And all it said was, "You are ready, call this number." That's all it said. So I called him up, and his assistant booked me, and he said, he wants you to come and train with him for the next 6 weeks or so. So I went to Sydney and I studied with him, and I started to get stronger. So much so that I decided I was going to move to Hawaii and study with a big kahuna and understand more of this stuff that I didn't understand. So through connections, I spoke to his wife, and she said, "It's the Kirk guy. He's going to come from Australia, and he's going to study with you. He's going to work for you. Do whatever you want. Be your apprentice." I said, yes, I'll be his apprentice, whatever. He said, "Yes, he come and work for me. Do whatever I say, for as long as it takes. Tell him going to cost him $10,000 US. And I'm like, what? I'm going to be his slave, apprentice, for however long, and it's going to cost me $10,000? I was gobsmacked. I said, "You're kidding me." And I hung up. And then 2 days later, $10,000 US arrives in my account from a Snickers commercial I did in 1997. Like 3 years before him, 4 years before, 5 years before. So I jumped on a flight. I went to Hawaii, arrived through customs, and the customs officer said, "What are you here for?" I said, "Well, I've been sick and I'm going to study with kahuna." She took offense to that. And she said, "Why would we let someone sick into our country? And you know the kahunas are witch doctors." I went, "Well," anyway, they threw me in a cell, they fingerprinted me, and they deported me back to Australia. But before I left, I got one phone call. So I called Kahu, and Ho'okai answered the phone and said, "It's Kirk. He's getting sent back to Australia. They're deporting him." And they both start laughing as hard as they can. Oh, that's perfect. I'm like, "Perfect? What are you talking about? I just dropped $2,000 on a flight that I've wasted. I've dropped $10,000 coming to you." He said, "No, you haven't. You still got your $10,000. You're just not coming to play with me." I said, "Well, what do I do now?" She said, "What does he do now?" And he says, "Whatever the fuck his heart wants." And they hung up. And I'm like, what the fuck? So I come back. Friends of mine were in Melbourne shooting a film, and they started laughing their asses off because all this drama would always happen to me, manifest this drama. They said, "Well, what are you going to do now? What's the thing you're going to do that you always wanted to do?" I said, "Well, fuck it. I'm going to move to the bush and I'm going to become an adventure guide." They said, "What? You can't just do that. There's got to be a course or something." So we got online, we had a look, we found this course, and the best course in Australia was 2 hours outside of Melbourne, a place called Eildon. And I went, "We're going there." So I called them the next day, and they said, "Dude, we got like a 2-year waiting list to get into this course. Intake is every 6 months. There's like 30 people on the list. But come on up, we'll interview you, and we'll see if we can put you on the list." So I went, "Okay." So I drove up, met the guy. He was an ex-army officer, and we started laughing our ass off at my story. He said, "That's funny." So just as we were talking, a phone call came. He said, "Excuse me, I've got to take it." And he gets off the phone. He said, "You're not going to believe it, but someone just cancelled from the course. It starts in 2 days. There's 30 people in front of you, but it's too short a notice for them to be here. Can you be here in 2 days to start?" I just went, fuck it. Okay. So I arrived, and for a year, I trained to be an adventure guide, rafting rivers, kayaking oceans, climbing mountains, digging snow caves. And every day we would travel somewhere, and I'd be sitting on the bus, and I'd be in meditation or doing my qigong, my energy work on the bus to wherever we were going to learn out in the wild. And I said to the other guys, please, who most of them were 10 years younger than me, "Please don't interrupt me whilst I'm meditating." And this one kid, his name was Jordan Ames. I'll never forget it. He yelled out one day, he said, "Hey, Westy." I'm like, I'm gonna fucking kill him. I'm gonna tear his head off. I'm all one with the world. I'm gonna kill him. And he says, "You're not sick anymore, bro." And I realized I wasn't sick anymore. I don't know when it happened, but I wasn't sick anymore. But my whole point to this story is, we value what we pay for. You can create the resources to go and learn and stay open to the next step. You take that step and another step presents itself. Now I don't have a poverty consciousness anymore. I create. And I've trained hundreds of people to create. But it takes fucking guts, man. It takes balls to go, I'm the one that's creating this shit. And you've got to step up. Luck isn't what you do, it's how you are.